Hi, my friends. Welcome. This is the Back to Me podcast, and this is Heather, and I am super excited that you're here. You are going to hear some tips and some tricks and some ideas to help you live your happiest and healthiest self. I call it Back to Me because when you are taking care of yourself, back to me, then you can take better care of others, and we can all make the world a better place. This is Wellness Your Way, and I am super happy that you're here. Hello, my friends. I hope you're having an outstanding day. It's a gorgeous day here because I've decided it is. I am Heather, and welcome to the Back to Me podcast. And we're going to talk to some more awesome people. And today we're talking to Dominiece. Did I say that right?
Yes, you did.
Dominiece Clifton. Mm-hmm. I love the Transformation University. So for people listening to the audio, underneath my name, it says Transformation Facilitator, and under Dominiece, it says Transformation University. So we are here to transform you, the world, everything, breathing, everything. Welcome, Dominiece. So nice to meet you.
Hi, Heather. Thank you for having me. And I love what you said about it's a beautiful day because I decided it was. And I was like, I'm going to say it's a beautiful day also because I decided it was. So I love that.
I have a friend, and we used to do this morning. We called it a morning power up. So for like 20 minutes every morning, Monday to Friday, a bunch of people would get online and we would just say, you know, one of the things is it's a beautiful day and I'm okay. It's a beautiful day and I'm okay. You look out the window, no matter what's happening, it's a beautiful day and I'm okay. And if you do it enough, then it's the truth, right? We make our own truth. And Transformation University, I think that's a very cool thing.
Thank you.
And my first question always, my guests know this. I love it. I mean, I love knowing the answers. What road led you to become this person that created a Transformation University? Like, what was what's your, I like origin story?
You know, whenever someone asks me that question, I always preface by saying that there wasn't some like major life event that happened that stirred things for me. I think that we come to our, like, I just call it awakenings in two ways. I think that sometimes we do get that big like life moment that happens that shakes us, you know, a loss, a health diagnosis or something that wakes us up. For me, it was just kind of going through my life. So I was born into a very traumatic birth story. Like my story starts really at my conception. I won't go into all the details, but my origin really starts in my childhood, and that really shaped the woman that I became. So I grew up with a lot of insecurities and unworthiness just because of a lot of unresolved childhood trauma. And I had really conceived stories in my head that as a child, as an adult, I realized weren't fully true. But as a child, I made sense of the world around me in a way that, you know, made sense to me. And so I grew up feeling very unworthy, like trying to hide myself from the world. I started struggling with my weight at 8 years old. It was a very drastic weight gain where at 7 years old, I was what you would, you know, consider a normal weight for a child. And then 8 years old, I was probably 50 or 60 pounds heavier. And that sudden weight gain and just holding all of that weight, it made me want to hide myself and dim my light. It was like I didn't want to be seen. And so that's really the way that I existed for over 2.5 decades. I did really well with academics and achievement. It was like the one part of my life that I feel like I had control over in the midst of not feeling very in control of other parts of my life. And so, you know, I was an A student. My mom was an educator. And so it was always instilled in me that education was important. And so from the outside looking in, people thought I was okay. And, you know, from society standards, probably thought I was doing really well, but I was always just numb, you know, and I didn't realize how numb I was existing until I came out of that state. And so in 2017, I was, you know, just at a space where I kept having this feeling of like, there's more for my life than this. And I didn't know what the more was at that time, but I had this desire, like my soul had this desire and was telling me like, this isn't it. This isn't all that you came here to do. And I was, one of the books that I would say changed my life was The Miracle Morning. That was really the start of my personal development journey. I started with the morning routine, and that kind of just built into, you know, the transformation that you see today. But really, my grandmother came to me in December of 2017. And I always joke and say that she summons me. She's an ancestor. She was at that time also. And she pretty much, you know, came to me, appeared to me in a meditation. We had a conversation, and she told me that I had work to do. You know, like there's more that you came here to do than this, and it's time to get started on that. And that was the start of my personal development journey. And the work that I'm doing today really came as a result of my own healing journey. So my background is in fashion, and then after fashion, it was fundraising and development. There's nothing that was related to wellness that I really like went to school for, and I never saw myself being in the space that I'm in today. Where I am today is strictly out of obedience, following the nudges and whispers that my soul has been, you know, higher self has been guiding me through over the last 7 years. But I've gone through my own healing journey, my own transformation. And then as a result of that, I'm now in a space where I am ready to share those tools and strategies and resources with other people, particularly women that are also feeling called and led to be more and do more in the world.
Wow. That was like, let's take your whole life and whoosh, go from here to there. But it is interesting. You made a comment about stories, and
Mm-hmm.
I think whoever you ask will have a story,
Mm-hmm.
whether it comes from their childhood or teenage years, like whether it starts as, you know, a conception story or wherever it starts. Everyone has these stories that they've accumulated in their lives that are true. I mean, all stories have a basis in some truth, but it's all
Yeah.
based on perspective.
Yeah.
Like, think about the people who thought that you were fine, but on the inside you weren't. And
Mm-hmm.
the stories that you were telling yourself about yourself are probably very different than the stories
Yeah.
that other people thought about
Yeah.
you was your story. And I think it's fascinating when we become really attached to those stories and unable to move past them.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So when the morning miracle morning,
Yeah.
who's the author of that book?
Hal Elrod. That was one of the first books I read. And that was, I would say, like the building block. My morning routine was the building block of the transformation.
Well, and I mean, everyone will come to it in their own way, but I think
Mm-hmm.
that it does, because it involved meditation, does it? Am I guessing?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So he has an acronym. It's SAVERS, and I don't remember the six, like what each of the six letters stand for in SAVERS, but it's, you know, it's scribing, so writing, affirmations, visualization is probably one of them, reading, exercising, meditation, and stillness. It was a combination of those things, and he teaches you to do all those things. Of course, my morning routine has definitely transformed and looks very different now as a mom and an entrepreneur, and so I don't do all of those things. But the basis of it was meditation and stillness. And meditation and stillness has been such a huge part and continues to be such a huge part of, I would say, really just aligning me with who I feel that I'm intended to be.
Right.
As someone who existed in the world for so long without knowing that and without having that clarity of purpose and just, you know, direction. And if you asked me 5 years ago or 7 years ago, who are you? I struggled to answer that question because I didn't know, but meditation was super helpful for finding those answers.
Well, and I was asking that because I think that where people struggle with their stories is they don't give themselves that quiet space, whether it's meditation or just time out of the hustle, to be able to discern, is that a story or is that a truth, right?
Yeah.
And I love that you actually did the miracle morning process, because it does change people. When I don't know what you do with your clients, but when I'm trying to get people to sit with themselves and have that space to explore it, I ask them to daydream because it's so less scary than meditating.
Mm.
So
Mhm.
just stare at the window and daydream for 5
Mhm.
minutes. Do you find that when people come to you, they're already ready to step into that, or is there some conversation about creating that quiet space?
Yeah, so the basis of my business coaching program, which is what Transformation University is, it's a 90-day program that really helps women to create a business in 90 days and then, launch that business. And so oftentimes the women that I'm working with, they are working a 9 to 5 and wanting to, like, they have an interest and goal in transitioning into entrepreneurship.
Mm-hmm.
And I help them to create a plan for that. But the basis of my business coaching program, and unlike any other business coaching programs I've been through, is a mind, body, spirit focus. And I call this the 4% formula. I started doing this process back in March of 2020, right around the time, ironically, that COVID started. The world stopped and I had plenty of time to be still. And so I was meditating one day. I got this download in the midst of feeling like my life was falling apart internally, as well as like the world shutting down externally. Every day for the next 90 days, focus on your mind, your body, and your spirit. And I went through that 90-day journey, which was really, I would say, I had been from 2017 to 2020, like doing the things kind of in motion, but nothing was sticking at that point. I was still very inconsistent.
Right.
March of 2020, that's when things really shifted for me with this 90-day challenge. And that was, I would say, like where I felt like I transformed. And I came out of that 90 days, a completely different version of myself, very much clear on, who I am, what I needed to be do, what was the next best step for me. And so that focus on every day for 90 days, nourishing my mind, my body, and my spirit, being very intentional about stillness and cultivating a relationship with self. I still do that to this day, almost 5 years later. I'll be celebrating my 5-year anniversary in March of 25. And
Yay.
because of how, yes, it's very exciting. Because of how that process transformed my life, I actually incorporated that into the foundation of the structure of my program. And so when women come in, they learn about this mind, body, spirit approach before we ever go into any of the business tools and strategies. Because what I've found is that mindset is such an important part of entrepreneurship and business. How we take care of our bodies is such an important part of, are we going to be able to sustain these visions that spirit has entrusted us with versus burning out, which was my past story. And then the spiritual piece is important because, that's the connection to higher self. That's where you get all the guidance and, the answers from your intuition that tell you the things that you need to be doing and help you become that aligned version of yourself. And so they do learn all the traditional, business things, the market research and creating your signature offer. But before we get into any of that, my clients start with that foundation of mind, body, and spirit, and then we go from there.
Right. And I think, so I think that I have found that, so when I went into the wellness space, I was in corporate as well. I was a
Mm,
corporate finance executive.
mm.
I mean, I was a CPA and I went into wellness. So the same kind of like
Yeah,
total switch, right? If you had asked me when I was a corporate executive, will you go into wellness? I would have thought, what, are you crazy?
yeah, that's a
But
very different path.
yeah. And I was actually a registered massage therapist for 14
Mm.
years after I left corporate. And what I found was that a lot of people, um, they they don't know how to access that inner knowing,
Mm.
that inner voice. Um, because when you're a massage therapist, you spend a lot of time with people. It's like,
Mhm.
unless they're asleep or they just want quiet, they're going to talk to you.
Mm.
And sometimes I felt like a bartender. But it's interesting. It's interesting. Like, you hear people have these ideas, and you can hear them have these great ideas,
Mm.
and they don't trust it, they don't
Mhm.
believe it. So quite often it is that mindset piece, right? That
Mhm.
it's okay to have those dreams
Yeah.
and it's okay to pursue those dreams. So your downloads come to you as ancestor voices coming, people coming to visit you, or
So I wouldn't say yes to that in the traditional like way of a medium because I don't feel that sort of connection, but I have definitely in meditations like been able to connect with my ancestors. My grandmother, she doesn't come to me often. She has a very strong presence where I know that she's here, but she pops in like every few years when it's like this, I need to get you on track, and she'll kind of reset or help me to pivot. But I have connected just to meditations, guided meditations and things with ancestors. But a lot of time, my greatest moments of clarity come to me when I'm in nature. I find I'll get like nudges from my intuition and guidance, or just through free form journaling. So whenever I want to, I would say, open myself up to receive, writing is a gift for me and something that flows and comes very naturally. And so whenever I'm feeling like I could use some extra help or guidance, I will write down a question to, spirit, to my guide, tribe, and open myself up to receive that. And I'll just start writing, and all of a sudden, like, answers that I didn't have, start coming to me, and the words are flowing and forming on the page. And so I would say for me, it's more of a connection to self. And then occasionally I might get, some sort of whisper or nudge from an ancestor, but that doesn't happen as often for me.
And it's interesting. I feel like sometimes it's different, but it's the same. So
Mm-hmm.
I'm an Akashic Records reader. I read Akashic Records for people.
Nice.
But before, like for years, I would do a version of morning pages. Not really.
Yeah.
I would meditate and then free write. And then
Mm-hmm.
the first line was always, "This is what I have to tell you." And then you don't think, you just write.
Mm-hmm.
And I got that from a meditation teacher, actually. But
Mm-hmm.
an interesting thing about writing your question down is there was a workshop that I was in where they encouraged you to write your question down with your dominant hand and write the answer with your non-dominant hand.
Oh, that's interesting.
Because
That's
it's a
very
different
interesting.
part. It's like unplugs part of the brain that's used to answering questions. And
Yeah.
you get very interesting answers. And the people's reaction was, "Oh, I can't write with my dominant hand." I'm left-handed, so of course
Mm.
I'm used to using both hands. But his response was interesting. I said his response was, "Yes, you can. You just never have."
Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't have to be perfect handwriting. It's just to get an answer to be able to flow through.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that there's an intuition teacher that I know teaching people how to get in touch with their intuition.
Mm-hmm.
Some people, they get very visuals. Some people
Mm-hmm.
get that auditory. Some people just get a sensing.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why I was asking if it was like you could see, she comes and sits down and says, "Hey girl, let's talk." Or,
I would love that. I would
right.
absolutely love that.
Mine comes through as more body feeling. I don't hear
Mm-hmm.
actual things. It's just like you ask a question and it says yes or no. I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
okay. But the universe will nudge you. So I like the fact that your grandmother came in and said, "Hey, it's time for you to do the thing you're here to do."
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think we're in agreement. Like, I feel like everybody had a soul agreement when they came of what they were
Yeah.
supposed to do.
Mm-hmm.
And the saddest thing, we all know we're going eventually to depart. The
Mm-hmm.
saddest thing is if you depart and then when you get up there, you go, "Shoot,
I forgot.
I forgot to do it. I got to
Yeah.
go back again."
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Do you find that people are kind of waking up more and tuning back into that a lot more?
Ooh.
Or
I would say, that's such a tough question. So the first thing I want to say before I answer that question is I think that I agree that we all have like a soul assignment. And I think that our human experience is about remembering that process. And so when I think about like purpose, I don't think about it as like, oh, I have to figure out my purpose. For me, I have to allow myself to remember my purpose. And that's really what my journey has been. It's going through a process of remembering the thing that my soul said yes to. And so when a lot of times when I like years ago would hear the word purpose, it would feel like this very like heavy task of figuring it out, right? But for me, it's just like allowing myself again to unearth, to uncover like what is already in me, and just like giving myself permission to walk in that. And so I wanted to preface that for anyone listening who, like, when you hear the word purpose, feels like it's a big thing, it's a big deal. It's a remembering process. Like, you already have all the answers, you already know everything. It's just, being still enough to allow yourself to connect with that. And then the question about like, are people, remembering or, awakening? I think that there is this interesting like time that we are now, where I feel like the sacred feminine is being restored. And I'm seeing that with, work that we're doing, and not necessarily just for women, but there's this return, I feel like, to the sacred feminine, where more women especially are stepping back into roles that we used to hold, thousands of years ago, as the guiders, and as the folks, as the folks that people would come to for guidance. And I feel like we are now in a space where people are feeling like okay with finding their way back to that space. I think, when and I don't want to go too deep into this, but like when the patriarchy became a thing, and, they started burning people for their powers and their connection, people were afraid of the more traditional roles that we now see people returning to. And so, like, as a sound bath healer, or, a breathwork facilitator, or, you mentioned Akashic records, like those were things that for so long we didn't have the courage to step into, because of the history of, what it meant to be connected in that way. But I feel like now there's this kind of, I guess, remembering that we're all experiencing on a global level, where the feminine is starting to be resurrected in a really beautiful way. And I think that process is helping both men and women to get back to a place of like where we are intended to be, and helping us to reconnect with those parts of ourselves. So I don't know if as a society we're all there, but I think more of us have the courage to be those authentic versions of ourselves, and kind of tap back into more of those feminine energies and power, that we've kind of gotten away from, just over the last thousands of years, with all the things that have happened.
That's so true. You just reminded me. I'm actually, do you know who Dolores Cannon is?
I don't.
She channeled a whole lot of books. Let me just say. So right now I'm listening to an audiobook, and it's about the Essenes, and it's very interesting because they followed kind of Hebrew law, but in her conversations, the Essenes felt that it was not right to have men and women as one more than the other, because it was, well, creator created both of them because you need both parts, right?
Yeah.
You need the balance. And it is true. I feel like even not just gender, but if you think
Yeah.
about the way business has been run, it's been that very
Very
hustle,
masculine.
very masculine, where if you bring in that balance, then people thrive more.
Yeah.
Of like, if you can bring in, there is a time to hustle, and then there is a time to rest. There is a
Yeah.
time to work. There is a time to play. If you
Yeah.
can bring in all those parts, not saying women are just always resting, but as a contrast, then it's more sustainable. Think of the businesses that I've worked in. The business would be more sustainable. Your employees would be happier. So that would be more sustainable. If we did it on an individual level, if we could balance that, which probably I'm thinking Transformation U is going, yes, but let's talk about taking care of ourselves too, mind,
Yeah.
spirit. Then here's my crazy big idea. As everybody finds what their purpose was, and I like the remembering better than the finding, because I did that work for a while, like, oh my God, what's my purpose? Oh my God, I don't know my purpose. Ah. And you feel like a failure
Yeah.
instead of going, oh, I remember, I'm supposed to help people. Right. Okay, super. As more and more people move to that, I think it will elevate the energy of the planet, whether
I agree.
everybody's there or not.
Yeah.
As the energy shifts, they will just be lifted along with it. It's like when
Yeah.
you walk into a room of really unhappy people, you hit that energy and you're like, oh, why do I feel so bad all of a sudden? You walk into an energy of happy people, you're like, yay. So as we all shift that way, then we'll all raise, which is
Yeah.
so awesome.
I love everything that you're sharing. And to even go back to the original question about, like, are more of us, awakening or just remembering, it's almost like there are those of us who are awakened that I feel like have a greater responsibility now to share this message and to pass this along. Because actually, and it's for me, it's when you look at society, especially our Western culture, and just the rate at which we are moving, everything is sped up and it's fast, and there is this hustle grind, and we're all distracted by social media and all of those things. I actually feel like we have a greater responsibility now for the folks that have gone through that remembering process to like pull someone else by the hand and say, hey, there's a different way to do this. Because on the contrary, like I feel like what we're seeing is, again, like this unsustainable pace that we're all moving at as a society. Everything is moving so fast. And to me, it's like it's more important now, I feel like, to share and have the type of conversations that we're having about finding more balance and slowing things down and reconnecting with ourselves. Because I don't know, like I think as just a global world, we've gotten away from that a lot. And so it's super important for us to just be having these questions and almost like planting these seeds for people when they're ready to receive it, to know that there is this like restoration or balancing act that needs to happen, in order for us to kind of, feel more aligned. Because although we are making strides, I think as a society, we've gotten away from that. And, everything is so fast. And, it's just, I don't know. To me, when I look at the way that the world is going, it's like this, how long are we going to be able to keep this up? You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah. There is the question of sustainability, like how
Yeah.
many planets do we need for the current lifestyle that we have?
Yeah.
And in some ways, I just had this visual pop in that we're moving faster, but we're kind of in this weird spiral because, and it was TV that popped into my head and movies. There's nothing new coming out. And they're just going back to the old stuff and speeding it up and making it faster. It's like, well, are we in a big recycle bin? It's like, what are you guys doing? Because there was a time where there was a lot of invention and unconventional thought and new ideas. And I think now people will think that there's nothing new and there's nothing to maybe look forward to. And especially if they watch social media and the traditional news channels. So I feel like what we talk about is like this opportunity for people to find other ways of thinking and other people who are going to help them find this new way to step into a newer reality or the reality that they'd rather be in.
Yeah.
We can just skip over to the fourth dimension. Let's just skip a dimension. It's more fun there.
Definitely more peaceful.
Right. So your 90-day program, is it a group program, or do people come into it as they discover you?
Yeah. So right now my goal is for it to be a group coaching program, but I'm allowing myself, so my coaching journey started back in 2020, right around the time of COVID. I was going through this huge like transformation, as I mentioned, of my own and awakening. And I started out as a nutrition and wellness coach at the time. Like that was my stepping into the coaching industry. And I had just quit my job in December of 2019. And at the time I quit my job, I just had my second daughter in September of 2019. And I have been really just trying to advocate on my behalf for better maternity benefits and better pay. And that was kind of the history of my experience with this job. And so I got to a point where I was tired and I was like, oh, I'll just, quit, take an extended maternity leave for 6 months and I'll jump back into work. And then COVID happened. And we know that that was not an ideal time to be entering the workspace, as so many people were getting laid off. And so I found myself at this place of needing to support my family and needing to make a decision about what was going to be the next step. Jumped into nutrition and wellness coaching because that felt like the space that made the most sense for entry for me at that time. I shared with you that I had struggled with my weight for over 2.5 decades, and going through this mind, body, spirit process, it made me realize that my struggles with my weight weren't just physical, right? Like there's this spiritual part of me, there's this mental part of me. And once I started allowing myself to heal and release those stories that we talked about earlier, the weight just started to come off as a byproduct of that. And so I realized I have been approaching my weight loss journey completely wrong for over 2.5 decades. I started my first diet in middle school. And so it was like 20 years of trying to do this one way and then realizing I'd been doing it all wrong. And what I was manifesting physically was just, a mirror of the things that I had been holding internally that I needed to let go of. And so when I gave myself permission to let go and to release those stories, the weight came off as a result. And since then, I've lost about 45 pounds and been able to keep it off. But I jumped into working as a nutrition and wellness coach because I wanted to help other women have that same sort of experience, right? And I did exactly what we've talked about. I was, just having a more masculine approach to my business, and I kept burning out. No matter what I did, I kept burning out. I'm also a human design projector. And so I've
Me
learned that
too.
since. Oh, you're a projector? Okay.
Yeah.
I love when I meet other projectors because then I don't have to explain my burnout. I kept burning out. I was hiring all these coaches, male business coaches, and they were giving me all of these strategies for building my business that just were not working for me. All that I was doing was feeling frustrated and spinning my wheels and like a hamster on a wheel. And again, just burning out. And so I quit coaching after about 2 years of doing it and just was like, y'all can have this. I'm done. I
Right.
started a different business. I started Move and Still, which is still a business that I have now. It's a B2B business. And so with that business, I get to support businesses, schools, and organizations with stress management, mindfulness practices, and well-being practices, really just to encourage a greater sense of well-being, whether it's in the workplace or working with folks directly in the community. When I started that business, I asked myself a question of how can I make wellness more accessible for all? Because I feel like the wellness industry it's kind of siloed and for certain people and not for certain people, and I was just like, everyone deserves access to wellness. Like, that's just a basic human need. And so I built that as a B2B model to be able to remove some of the barriers that come with getting help and support when it comes to wellness. And I was doing that, and I was completely happy in that role. And then at the top of this year, I started getting a download and nudges to step back into coaching. And I didn't really want to, based on my last experience. I was like, nope, I've tried that. It didn't work for me. Like, it wasn't great. I was just exhausted all the time. I don't want to do that. And I decided, after really sitting and meditating with where I was being led and how my soul was guiding me, to be obedient. That's really what that was, to be obedient to where I was being guided, and to realize that after soaking up so much information and learning over the last 7 years, it was now time for the student to become the teacher. Like, I just amassed so much information and knowledge, and I've started several businesses. And so I just restarted, like, just allowed myself to step back into the coaching space about 5 months ago now, I guess. And so I'm starting out one-to-one because I really want to make sure that I build out an amazing program that has great impact and is able to support other women as they want to go out and carve out their place in the world. Eventually, I know that as I grow, it will transform into its own group coaching program. But for right now, the clients that I'm serving, I get to work with them very intimately, one-to-one, and to build that out really well, and then just allow it to organically morph into a group coaching process. So the majority of it is one-to-one, but there are some group coaching and accountability elements that are infused in it. And there's a community, a daily accountability group and community, where we post and share updates and wins. And we go through this 4% process, which is the mind, body, spirit process. And we share that out as a group. So it's a little bit of both, I guess.
Yeah. But I was going to say, so if you're interested, that was the perfect time, because you get her one-on-one,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
it is true in the beginning, because I run beta programs. The beta
Yep.
programs are that opportunity to really get that really focused time
Yes.
and energy and
Yes.
and experience. So,
Yeah.
friends,
That's
we're
exactly where I am right now. Beta, it's a discounted rate for the investment because it is beta, and I'm saying, I want your feedback. We're in this together. Tell me the things that need to be improved. And I love that we're having this conversation, because I think oftentimes, especially as new entrepreneurs, we sometimes can assume that we have to have everything all figured out when we start. And I have to constantly give myself permission to be okay with the figuring it out process, right?
yeah,
It's okay to still be making modifications and to take feedback and tweak it and make it better, and everything, regardless of if you've been in 5 or 10 years, you're always reiterating and refiguring out. But I definitely think that's important for folks listening to know that that's a natural part of that beginning process, and to take some of that pressure off of ourselves about feeling that we have to have it perfect at the start, which sometimes holds people back from even getting started.
right. I did a course with Ellen Yin, and one of her quotes was, "If you're not embarrassed by your first tries, waited too long to start.
Oof, so good. It's so
Right?
funny that you mentioned that because I just was it yesterday? Yeah, yesterday evening I had a call with a guy from Australia, and so we were on the call at 7 p.m. And I told him, he asked me like my favorite quote, and I was like, right now there's a sticky note on my wall that says embarrassment is the cost of entry, and that one is by Ed Lattimore. And I just saw it randomly one day and was like, that's very true. I
Right?
feel I feel that all the time. You know what I mean? Like if a little bit of your dignity is not, sacrificed in the process, and I don't know if you've done it completely right, because that's just a natural part of starting anything new and putting yourself out there. It's very vulnerable, and
It
sometimes
is.
embarrassment comes with it.
Well, and it's funny, another one along the same lines that I got from a coach that I know in Australia actually
Nice.
is mistakes are proof that you're trying.
Oof, that's so good. Oh, I
Right?
love that one.
That's
Hmm.
so good.
Yeah.
So, where do our friends find you
Yes, I'm writing
and
that
your
down.
university? I can see you writing.
So my website is domrclifton.com, and that's the space where you can go and learn more about my work and the coaching program. I do a daily newsletter, and so I send out business tips and well-being tips, tips about how to, manage all of the responsibilities that we hold as, humans these days. I have a background, I would say, in wellness as a somatic practitioner. So yoga, breathwork, meditation, and sound healing. And so I really like the merger of business and all of these well-being practices, and like finding the ways that they mesh well together. And so my daily newsletter offers tips to just sustain ourselves in our daily lives. And so you can check out my website to learn more about that. And then I didn't get to talk about it a ton here today, but that process that I mentioned about just really finding time to nourish mind, body, and spirit every day, I've come up with the formula. I call it the 4% formula, where you can spend an hour daily, and it doesn't have to be a consecutive hour where everything is done at once, but you can spend an hour daily really being intentional about mind, body, and spirit, and connecting with all of those parts of yourself. And so for anyone who's interested in learning more about that process and going on a 30-day challenge to, embark on that journey of nourishing all the parts of ourselves, you can go to 4percentformula.com, and 4 is spelled out FOUR, percentformula.com, and learn more about that process.
Cool. Yeah. I feel like our podcast could go for like a couple hours if we kept talking, right? And I'm going to grab all of those links. Don't worry, friends. They'll
Okay.
all go into the show notes. Because sometimes I don't want you to text and drive. I want you to
Yeah,
be
for
paying
sure.
attention to the road. And I was on the subway the other day. Someone almost fell down the stairs because they were texting and walking. So don't even text and walk.
Yeah.
But definitely go to the show notes and check out, go for the 30-day challenge. I mean, who cares if you make a mistake? You're just trying to see if you can try something new, right?
Yes. Mistakes are definitely a part of the process. It's not
They
about
are.
perfection, right? Mistakes are proof that you're trying, as you just said.
Exactly. Thank you so much for joining me and sharing all of this. Before we go, the guest always gets the final word of wisdom. Do you have a thought for the audience?
Gosh, I think what's coming up for me right now is the importance of just making time for stillness, right? We've talked about that today. Oftentimes we're so busy, we're moving so fast, we're seeking answers externally. And so we're looking for our partner, our colleagues, our friends to tell us what to do. And we feel like there's more that we need to be doing, and we want to be aligned with our purpose, but we don't know where to start. And the greatest advice or wisdom that I can offer just from my own learning journey is giving yourself time to be still, to tune into your higher self, to find those answers. And so whether you have a daily practice of doing it or not, how can you find time for stillness to allow yourself to go through that remembering process, and then to see what you unearth as you do that? And so I would just say pause and be still and see what comes up.
I love it. I love it. It's so awesome. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Friends in podcast land, share this with someone who has not yet remembered what they're here to do. Share it with someone who you know has a great idea and could use some help on getting that thing up and running to transform the world. Let's transform the world together, friends. Take care. I will see you next time. Hi, my friend. Thanks so much for listening to this entire podcast. If you found it useful and you're like me and you like helping others, please feel free to share this. Just give it a like, give it a comment. If you found something useful in it, there's a chance that someone else will find something useful as well. Also, if you have any questions at all, I can absolutely help, and I would love to help. You can email me at heather@prosperityflowcoaching.com. If you want more of this awesome content, you can follow me on Instagram, Heather Stewart Coaching. You can follow me on Facebook, Prosperity Flow Coaching. And I have a personal request. I want to help as many people as I can with these podcasts. And if you could give me a review, hopefully a good one, if you could share, if you could send this out into the world, I would truly appreciate it. I hope you have an amazing day, and I hope that you find your way to wellness by getting back to me. Take care, my friend.